Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Blessing in Divorce. Today is the last installment in our 6-part healing series that I've been running this summer, where we're talking about exactly that, all things related to healing. When I first started the series, I talked to you a bit about pain and our pain story and how do we move past all of this. And so we've talked about several things for the last several weeks, like identifying the pain story, focusing inward towards healing and the practices that we need to feel better, understanding our grief and why it causes us to ruminate on our memories and the past and our pain. And then our 4th week was all about unmet and unrealistic expectations that we tend to have or that people might have of us, right? Last week, we talked about planning for the future. And this week, I'm going to talk about fear. Fear is a huge part of our lives. And we no longer have to worry about things like being eaten by a T-Rex or a saber-toothed tiger or being attacked by a caveman, or at least not literally. But fear, the most common fear that we experience these days is a lot more attached to things that are in our head, things like our emotions, experiences, and all those kinds of things. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. Let's just jump into this last episode in this series and let's see where we can get with it. Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Blessing in Divorce. I am so grateful to be allowed into your headset and day today. My name is Elizabeth and I'm the host of this podcast and the owner and founder of The Separation Club, which is the club you never wanted to be part of, but the best club to be in if you're going through separation and divorce. Here we talk about how to heal, move forward, and find love if you're so inclined. Also, motherhood through divorce, finding yourself, and creating the life you deserve. Our tools are community, sisterhood, honesty, vulnerability, spirituality, and coaching. And that's when we aren't talking to our experts. I'm also a divorced mother of 4 adult sons, remarried, and a stepmom to 3. So we will be talking about everything that goes with all of that here. If you are recently separated, thinking of separating, divorcing, or even beyond your divorce, but still feeling it, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome back. There are so many things that we feel afraid of when we're going through separation and divorce. It could be fear of the future, fear of being alone, fear of finances, fear of emotions, or the healing or absence of healing as we go through this. It could be around fear of loss of family. So, for example, your in-laws or friends. And then there's fear of like the uncertain future and finances. And then there's fear of what people might be thinking of you. There's just so much that feels so freaking scary and big and unknown that it causes it, like, honestly, sleepless nights, anxiety, depression, just really a lot of emotional turmoil inside of us. So I want to address a little bit of that today as much as I can in a podcast episode. So I want to start off by saying that feeling fear around one of, or all of the things that I just talked about, that sounded a bit confusing. But anyhow, you hopefully heard what I said or understood what I said. What you're feeling is completely normal and to be expected under the circumstances. Everything that you were counting on is not happening. Everything that you'd planned for, no longer happening. The person who you were going to do all these potentially scary things with down the road, whether it was becoming a parent or raising your kids or buying a new home or whatever, just going through life with them, that's also not happening. So all the things that you had developed some sense of safety around and expectations around, like this is where my life is going, this is who I'm doing it with, and this is how we will support each other, for example, gone. Of course it's scary to look at your future and go, what now? Who's going to support me as I go through life? Who's going to help me raise my kids? How will I cope? How will I manage? Who will be there for me? I also think that these things can feel incredibly scary and lonely because we have been raised and conditioned to believe that the only person really that we can count on for those things is our life partner. So this person being your spouse, the person, your romantic partner, your husband, wife, that kind of arrangement. So we haven't necessarily, society's not set up anymore to have this sort of village approach where everyone is there for everyone. Where being alone, meaning that you're either divorced or widowed or just on your own, doesn't mean you're alone, because there's always people around to help. That's not how we're set up anymore. That is not how people approach life. People are very private, they keep to themselves, they don't want to interfere. And quite honestly, a lot of people just don't want to help because it's either an inconvenience for them or it pokes them a little bit too much in the area of their own fears. I developed a theory when I was going through this myself, and I was surprised by how many of my married friends really weren't there for me. And I think there were a couple of reasons. I think I had now become the proof of their fear story, meaning what if my marriage ends, right? Oh my God, it happened to Elizabeth, it could happen to me. And I think also they had a fear of the strong emotions that I had, and being around that, almost like it's somehow contagious, And I think also other people potentially are not happy in their own relationships, but they haven't really gotten to a place where they want to accept that or face that. And listening to you, for example, talk about the things that happened and how the decision was made to separate or how you feel, it makes it much harder for them to ignore, if you will, the problems that they might be having. Whatever it is, you often find that the people you thought you could lean on are actually not really there for you. And that can be really hard. That can feel like a loss in addition to everything else. I very often hear from my coaching clients and people inside our community that not only have they lost their partner, but they've also lost their friends. They have no one. And I'm really sorry if you're experiencing that. That's really hard. I want you, when it comes to that particular fear, that first thing that we're sort of talking about, this lack of having your people. And I talked about, by the way, finding your people in the previous episode. I want you to open your mind to that other people that you might not have thought of can support you in these areas. I was actually just speaking with a client earlier today, and we talked about exactly this, and just opening her mind to that. Friends can be this person, single moms, your family. You'll find that surprising people will rally around you, and then you'll also be surprised, like I said, about the people who don't. Allow people to step forward and help you. Allow people to be kind to you and compassionate. Trust that if somebody steps forward and says they want to help, that they actually do. So really open your mind to that and allow the fear of being alone to not be this crippling, sort of isolating feeling where you don't trust anyone and I'm just going to be alone forever, and then you just never go out. You might be afraid of conversations that are going to happen when you're out with people, like how did it happen or what's going on. And I want you to know that it's completely acceptable to say to people, I'd rather not talk about it. I don't want to spend time tonight talking about something sad. I want to spend my time here with you, having a good time and getting out. It's okay to not keep repeating your pain story and your fear story, because first of all, it gets stronger. Where attention flows, energy grows, right? And also, it's really hard to have fun when you're always just talking about the crappy stuff, right? So that would be one of my first tips for you as we address the fear of being alone, is to, first of all, embrace new people into your life and new possible support people, and also allowing yourself to go out and say no to people when they ask you about your pain story. Just say, thank you so much for asking. That's so sweet of you. I'd rather not talk about it today. That's good enough. They're probably just as happy not to, right? And if they're just looking for some gossip, they shouldn't be trusted really anyway, because they're just going to go and tell someone else. So there we have that. The next fear that I'd like to talk about, which is a really big one for people, is the fear of their finances. It can feel really scary. So depending on your financial situation, you may be dependent financially on, or partially dependent financially on your soon-to-be ex. You may be fully dependent on them, as I was, because I was a stay-at-home mom for 17 years. So that was scary. Or you might even be financially independent in that you can take care of yourself. You've got a good paying job or career. However, you might be facing the fact that you're now going to have to give them support, for example. And that can feel really difficult and scary. And how much will you be left with? And all of that. So when it comes to this kind of fear, like practical fears, I call them. So fear of the legal battle, fear of finances, fear of the specifics, right? Knowledge and information, education are your absolute friends here. These are your tools. So get in touch with a lawyer if your fear is about like, how is this going to play out? What is this going to cost me? Talk to a lawyer and ask them what their fees are and how much it generally costs, for example. Get in touch with a mediator, find out what their process is and how much it costs. Also, be willing to pay for that initial consult with an attorney just to find out your basic rights so that you know what you're entitled to. Because what often happens in marriages as they end, especially if there's been any kind of financial withholding, betrayal, or control by the other person, you might not really know what's going on. And you might be, they might be telling you a story that doesn't feel good at all. By going to speak to someone who's an expert on this, you can get information from them that's real, that's legal, that is relevant, as opposed to someone whose now best interest is to get as much as they can from you, telling you what you should be doing financially. So instead of being afraid of your future finances, go and find out what your rights are, go and learn the ins and outs of it, speak to the people who actually know. So who are they? So of course your lawyer could help you, accountants can help you. I talked all about this again, by the way, who your people are in the previous episode. But the most important person that I think a lot of people don't consider is the CDFAs, the Certified Divorce Financial Advisors. And by the way, they're not just for wealthy people. And an hour with a CDFA costs way less than an hour with your lawyer. I don't know, way less, but it definitely costs less. Depends on the fee of your lawyer. So go and look up a CDFA in your state or your province, depending on which country you're in, or, it's local to you. It doesn't have to be local town, but in the local state, like I said, so that because they have to comply with certain laws in that area, right? So go and speak with them. Now, having said that, coming up in the Rising Free membership was just launched this week. It is ready for you to jump in, by the way. I have a CDFA, Eva Sachs, who's coming to speak with us on the 31st of July. And while she is based in Ontario, Canada, where I am, she has an absolute incredible amount of just sound advice, just general financial guidelines, things to know, questions to ask, resources that can help you. And the best part is, if you're on this call, you get to ask her questions. Like, you can ask her specific questions for you. Now, if you don't live in Ontario, she wouldn't be able to give you specific sort of advice around like specific forms or specific laws. But I'm really asking everyone to stay away from those kinds of questions anyway. The thing that she can help you with is to understand the process, understand your rights, and also understand how many options you have. So I'm just really looking forward to asking her, what are the options for a woman who's in, for example, this situation, and I know that Eva will be like, she could do this, this, or this. And so this is going to be so valuable. So if financial fear and fear of the kind of your future in that area is of your concern at all, I really recommend that you make an effort to join the Rising Free membership community. It's a special divorce community just for women. And that call is happening. So next Wednesday, a week today, when you're listening to this episode. All right. So that was financial fear. Now I want to move forward and talk about emotional fear. And I get that a lot from people as well. This sort of fear of, am I going to feel like this forever? Am I going to be in pain forever? How will I heal? For many of you, and it was true for me as well, This was the hardest thing. Well, I'd had a death early, many years before that had been really difficult. But in many ways, this was the hardest thing I had gone through to date because of how it literally leveled my life, or upended it, whichever way you want to put it. But it just really threw everything up in the air, and I didn't know where anything was going to land. And add to that, incredibly strong emotions, right? So now I'm being asked to make major decisions financially, legally, parenting-wise for my children. Where do I want to live? Do we want to sell the house? When? All these decisions in the middle of being so emotionally distraught that I couldn't even think straight. I couldn't read. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't focus on things for anything more than a minute at a time. I was such an emotional wreck for a period of time. And even when I started to feel better, I still found so many of those things really challenging. And it was at times difficult to imagine that I would ever feel really happy and good again. But I did. And I know how I did it. And this is what I share with my clients in Rising Free, of course, and also in our coaching sessions. But here's what I want you to know about emotional fear, or fear of your strong emotions. First of all, of course you can heal. Everybody can. The pain that you're going through, as much as it feels like you're the only person going through this kind of pain right now, and you might not know anyone else, like I didn't, who's gone through this, know that you're not alone, and know that it's okay that you're in pain, and that in fact feeling the pain is exactly how you heal the pain. So what I want you to do to feel again more in control of your own emotions and the healing of them is to allow yourself to feel your feelings, and then identify what it is that hurts. Ask yourself questions like, why did that hurt so much? Or why am I so triggered by this? Or why am I crying right now? And you might be thinking, I don't know, I'm just crying all the time. But really ask, why am I crying right now? What was it that triggered this particular crying session? Even if you can't answer that, then as you're kind of wrapping up your crying, what were the thoughts that went through my head? What were the things that I was thinking as I was crying? Maybe it's the same thing you think every time. That's okay. Just write it down. Write it down in your journal if you have one. If you don't have one, you really should get one. Or write it down on a piece of paper. And you don't even have to really analyze it or think about it too much right now. If you have a therapist or a coach, you can bring that sheet of paper to them. But just keep all those pieces of paper or notes in your phone or whatever in one place. And then maybe after a couple of weeks, sit down and look at all of that and just see if there's a common thread or something there that you didn't even remember that you wrote down, but you did write it down. You can learn so much about yourself when you're going through a crying fit, if you will, or when you're really emotional because you're feeling it so strongly. Basically, what's happening is that an old wound is coming back to the surface. Something has been ripped open. The stitches have been ripped open. The band-aid's been pulled off. The scab has reopened. Something has reopened that is causing this flood of emotions and these tears. What is it? And so it's these little notes and these thoughts and the things that you write down that'll give you the clues that you need. And then you'll know what needs to be healed. And when you know what needs to be healed, you most likely can also figure out who you need to help you to heal with that, who you need help from to heal that, whatever. There's so much valuable information. You can't heal it until you feel it. Another saying, I know I seem to be coming up with a lot of these today, but it's actually true. If you just push it away, if you just get stiff upper lip, don't cry, push it away, be strong, be resilient. Yeah, you know what? We all have to do that. We all have to be strong. We have to wipe off our tears. We have to cope. We have to get through the day. But if you just push it away and you never address it and you never look at it and you never do any active healing, eventually you'll feel better, mostly because you've learned to stuff the feelings away. But the feelings are still there and they're so powerful. They're so strong. They will eventually, if you don't pay attention, they'll try to come back, crying, feeling depressed, feeling anxious. If you're not paying attention, they will eventually make you sick. They will find a way to make you stop and pay attention to the unhealed parts of you. So it's so important to allow yourself space to heal. So don't be afraid of your emotions. Don't be afraid of your feelings or how long you're going to be feeling this way. Make a decision to learn from your feelings and to take an active part in healing yourself. Because you can, just like I did, just like everyone does. You can. And yes, get help with that. I think that it said that like 18 times in the previous episode. Get help with that. All right. Moving on. Let's talk a little bit about what we can do when we feel fear, other than what I've already suggested. There is a tool that I learned many years ago, and it actually was given to me as a way to overcome fear in business. And this is another fear that we feel a lot as well. So not necessarily just for business, but we feel fear around failure, like fear of failing, fear of, people not liking us, fear of success even, which I don't even understand exactly how that works, but apparently I think I'm dealing with a bit of that. Anyway, there is so many things that we can be afraid of. And I had a business coach some years ago, and she gave me, she told all of us, we were in a group, this sort of way to overcome fear. And I really liked it. And I have found that it really helps even when I work with my clients inside the Separation Club, when they express fear around some part of this journey of whether it's healing or their divorce, like, the legal and financial, or parenting or whatever, like whatever the fear is. So take a minute, and if you're at home, maybe hit pause after you've heard my question, but grab your journal and write down one of your greatest fears. Like, think about it. What is one of the things that you're really afraid of? So write that down on top of the page. So it might be, I'm afraid of my uncertain future or the unknown. I'm afraid of my, the finances, or how I'm going to survive or support my children and myself, whatever. Like, write down your fear. And then write down, once you've done that, write down what is the worst thing that could possibly happen here. And I would encourage you to be a little bit realistic. One of the things that I've had several people say to me, for example, is, I'm afraid I'm going to become homeless. And my first question to that is always, are you at the verge of being homeless now? Well, no. My soon-to-be ex-husband, for example, makes this much money. It's like, well, then you're not going to be homeless. So let's be realistic too. Like, let's make sure that we're not sitting in our mind and just kind of blowing up this fear with unrealistic fears like that. So write down your worst possible fear that is within, I guess, the realm of possibility that could happen. Okay. And then just ask yourself, and again, like, put on your very sort of practical, try to emotionally stable hat, and ask yourself, now, what is the likelihood of that happening, right? Well, whatever. Write down whatever likelihood you think it might be. Now, here comes the important part. Okay, so what if that happens? What if that happens? Whatever that is, that great fear, what happens? What will I do if that actually happens? Like, seriously, what will you do? Whatever that is. So here, pause this podcast episode if you need to and come back to it. But I want you to really think about that. And I want you to come up with a few solutions. You might be able to come up with 2 or 3 or 5 or 6, or who knows, or maybe only one. But solve the problem. What would I do if this happens? Another way that you can approach this is, again, asking yourself, what if this happens? Then what? Then what happens? So it's not necessarily that you're being asked to come up with a solution, because if you get really stuck and you can't, then like, what happens? If this worst case scenario happens, then what? Or write that down, whatever then what is. And then ask again of that new sentence, that new thing that would happen if the worst thing happens. Okay, so then if that happens, then what? And keep asking until you completely get stuck. But really dig for this, okay? Dig deep. Just really find those answers. And when you get to usually when we go through this exercise, like with my clients or in a course or something like that, we can usually get 3 to 4, maybe even 5 deep on the then what. And then kind of it's like, okay, well, then they just realize, I guess I found my solution. And I also know that the likelihood of any of those things happening are so slim. But I can see that if it does, I'm going to be okay. Because there are the solutions in the then what happens, sentences, right? So again, it's like with anything. Like I said to you earlier, about facing, feel it to heal it. Well, you want to get over your fear? Then look it square in the eye. Write it down, look at it and go, okay, there you are, my greatest fear. What if you actually happen? Then what? What will I do? Or then what happens? Write it down, and then what? Okay? Face it. Look at it on paper. It is incredibly empowering to look at it because you will realize you're going to be fine. Maybe not necessarily in your perfect scenario right now, but you're going to be okay. Whatever that worst case scenario, that then what, is, you can improve on that. It's like, okay, well, if I end up there, then I'll do this. And how will I get myself out of that? Well, I could do this, this, and this. Or I could talk to this person or get help from that person. There's always a solution if you're looking for it. But if you only get stuck in the fear space, if you just stay in the, oh my God, I'm so afraid, I don't know what I'm going to do, I can't do this, then you're right. You won't be able to do this. It's like Henry Ford said, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you are right. So let's start becoming a I can person. I will figure this out person. I will overcome my fear person. I will not let fear get the better of me, because fear, ladies, fear, dear listener, is just an emotion. It is an emotion based on the thought that you have invented. You have created a scenario in your mind. You have this thought in your head that this is going to happen, or what if, and you've gotten yourself into a lather about it, okay? No, I'm not trying to make fun or minimize. However, I do want you to understand that this is not real. Your fear is not real. You're just afraid of something that could happen. And now that you've done this exercise with me, now you have the solution if it does. So you can look at your fear and go, I really, really don't want that to happen. But if it does, I now know that I will be okay. And you know what? Suddenly the clouds just look a little bit lighter. They lift a little bit higher, and a little bit of sun comes through. And you start to really feel into that you're going to be okay. You are strong. You are resilient. You will figure this out. I know that. Yes, you might need some help. In fact, I encourage you to get help with this, because 2 minds on it, twice as fast to the solution, right? Or you jump into something like the Rising Free community and you start getting all these answers and connecting with other women. Well, now you might get over your fears in a, one meeting, in a day, in a week. I don't know. Anything is possible. When we come together and we're all looking for solutions and we're all looking for healing and we're all looking to create a beautiful life for ourselves, it's pretty empowering and powerful to bring women together for that purpose, to not only help ourselves, but to help each other. There's an incredible energy in that, and I want you to be part of it. And that leads me to once again share with you about the Rising Free membership, which is launched this week. So it is, like I said, it is a special women only divorce support community. It is a place for you to feel safe, to ask questions, to get answers, to connect with other people, with experts, to jump on coaching calls with me. I address the more emotional part. Some of the people we're going to have coming up, so there'll be a coaching call with me every month. There will be an expert or a guest speaker every month. We'll be talking about things. I'll have a grief expert, a financial expert, a family lawyer. There will be psychotherapists. There will be women's empowerment coaches. Like, there's going to be so many incredible women. I think it's in October. I don't have the schedule in front of me. I have this incredible woman coming on as a guest speaker. She's a trauma-informed therapist, and she specializes in working on healing from, a narcissistic relationship or marriage and how to divorce them. I mean, so valuable for so many of you. So I invite you to be part of this membership. And it is right for you regardless of where on the journey you are. Whether you're here to just get legal advice for now, or whether you're at the beginning of your journey or the end of your journey and you just need emotional support, it's the right place for you. Because yes, we might have a guest speaker one month that you're not interested in because you're done with that part. That's no problem. There's still a coaching video or the coaching call. There's also a library full of self-care, confidence building, spiritual, meditative, incredible videos that you can just jump into anytime you want. And yes, of course, there's an app for all of this. But anyhow, basically, you'll have a library full of resources so that you can get exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. That's the Rising Free Support Community membership that is now available to you. So I'd love for you to check it out. The link will be below. And I think with that, I wrap up the summer series. You know, it's been really fun to work through this series with you. I've gotten really good feedback from all of you as well, and I so appreciate that. And if you haven't already left a comment or some stars, I would really appreciate it if you would, so that more women who need this can find it. I'm definitely going to be doing these kinds of series again going forward, but it has been really fun to go on this healing journey with you, you know, addressing all these different areas of healing. I think I said in the very beginning that they were being shared with you in no specific order. It's not like you have to do this first and then this. It's just all the different elements and facets of healing. As you might go back and listen to some of these, or maybe you skipped some of them because they weren't relevant for you, that's great. I'm glad you're finding the content that you need and that you know what you don't need as well. That's half the battle right there. So I'm really proud of you for taking this time, for choosing to step into this healing for yourself, and for being here with me for these episodes. So thank you for your choices, your vision, your desire to feel better and create something new for yourself. And thank you for choosing me to take up a small part of your day, to be in your headset today. I'm truly grateful. And I look forward to hanging out with you again really soon. Thank you, and have a beautiful day.